The war in Gaza has thrust Palestine's official status back into the spotlight. Nearly 3/4 of the UN's members recognise Palestine as an independent state, but many Western countries do not. Is that about to change? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. European nations sympathetic to Palestine and horrified by the loss of life there are leading the charge to recognise Palestinian sovereignty. Is the dream of so many displaced people close to finally becoming a reality?
Ireland and Spain are two of Europe's most pro-Palestinian countries. Since the war started, their citizens have week in, week out shown solidarity. And there's also support at the highest levels of government.
Spain, ladies and gentlemen, is prepared to recognise the Palestinian state.
Spain and Ireland have long taken a special interest in the region, and I know we are both strongly committed to the vision of a two-state solution.
There are reports the two countries, along with Slovenia and Malta, could recognise Palestinian statehood by the end of May. Palestine is recognized as a sovereign state by 143 of the 193 UN members. It has been a General Assembly non-member observer since 2012. This puts America at odds with the majority. A vote in April over the issue of allowing Palestine to formally join the UN was vetoed by the United States.
This vote does not reflect opposition to Palestinian statehood, but instead is an acknowledgement that it will only come from direct negotiations between the parties.
To Washington, they don't deserve to have their own state. They are only an obstacle to the realization of Israel's interests.
The atrocities in Gaza have softened attitudes towards recognizing Palestinian statehood. The move would give Palestine a surer footing on the global stage, allowing it to advocate for its own interests. So how will Israel's allies deal with this shift in the status quo?
Well, let's meet our guests. Joining us from Connecticut in the United States is Faisal Saleh. He's the Executive Director of the Palestine Museum, US. Daniel Levy is President of the US Middle East Project and a former negotiator for Israel. He joins us from London. And I'm delighted to say here with me in the studio is Kamel Hawwash. He's a Palestinian academic and political analyst. Gentlemen, you're all very welcome to Roundtable. I'll come to you first, Kamel. Ireland, Spain, Slovenia, Malta, this list is growing.
Yes, absolutely. We need to move forward. I mean, one day, and unfortunately it can't come soon enough, the aggression on the Palestinians, the slaughter will stop. So then what next? There's obviously the immediate for Gaza, but then you need a solution for the long term that actually, once and for all, will stop any future action like this and begin to reduce the hatred. Because I think one of the worst things at the moment is that you watch settlers taking aid of trucks and destroying it. The level of hatred is high. And of course, the Palestinians in Gaza are helpless. They can't demonstrate much hatred or otherwise. So I think it's important we begin to move forward. The recognition of Palestine does seem to have legs, but they're all talk. The United States vetoed it. David Cameron here at one stage said that was the way forward. He said nothing since, except he's going to continue to arm Israel. So it is important we move beyond Gaza for the benefit of the children who survived Gaza and those in the West Bank as well.
Daniel, Israel has described recognition of Palestine as a, quote, prize for terrorism. That's quite a take on this, isn't it?
Well, it's an Israeli governmental official take. We've seen the nothing short of clownish, insulting behavior of the Israeli ambassador at the United Nations in New York. I don't think he or the country cloak themselves in glory. Then again, that couldn't apply to what is being done every day in Gaza either. But yeah, Enda, what I would say is this is interesting because the Israelis are saying prize for terror cannot happen, foursquare against it, which may make people think, well, perhaps there's something to this. maybe recognition is therefore a really positive thing. But I would just challenge that equation. And I wonder whether, for the Israeli government, they're against this and they don't like the symbolic element of recognition. It will feel like a bit of a political defeat. But are they perhaps quietly rather happy that this is a red herring? The question I would pose to those countries who are poised to recognize Palestine, and some of them may well be doing so with good intentions, is what happens the morning after you recognize? You're recognizing a state that is going to continue to be under belligerent, illegal, and permanent occupation. Once you have recognized that state, what would you do in your bilateral relations with the party that is occupying the state you've recognized, with Israel? Will you continue bilateral trade relations as normal? Will you continue arms trade with that country? What's the meaning beyond the symbolism of this recognition? And if it doesn't have meaning beyond symbolism, then is that really what we need in 2024 after everything we've seen? So Israeli opposition, I would suggest, may be as much a ruse as it is genuine.
That's a good point, Faisal, isn't it? That, you know, it's all well and good, these countries saying they will recognise Palestinian statehood, but there needs to be immediate action afterwards.
Yes, and I agree with that. I mean, what we're seeing now is a push to create something that should have happened a long time ago. The Palestinians have been without a status for over 75 years now. They were taken over by Jordan originally in 1950, occupied by Israel in 67, and you know, the West Bank was shredded into tiny little pieces. So the Palestinians have been on the receiving end of injustice for a very long time. It is time for the international community to recognize what happened to the Palestinians, and we see signs of it. You know, the General Assembly has given additional privileges and rights to the Palestinian delegation. We're seeing global support for Palestine. What happened during the last 6 or 7 months has resulted in generating tremendous empathy for the Palestinians and the Palestine cause in the world. And even though some of the governments are still standing behind Israel, their people are going to drive them into supporting Palestine at some point. You know, look at what's happening in the universities in the United States and in Europe and Australia and around the world. So what we're seeing here is a dramatic change in how the world is looking at Palestine and the Palestinian issue. Now, from a practical point of view, there are a lot of issues to be resolved here. So the day after recognition of Palestine as a state by the United States, the first thing that needs to be addressed is who is representing the Palestinians at that point. The PA that exists today is a corrupt organization and is an illegitimate organization and is not the representative of Palestinians. And that's going to be the biggest issue to deal with. So,
well, Israelis are becoming more skeptical of a two-state solution. Some research from Pew Research in 2023 found that only 35% of Israelis believe a way can be found for Israel and an independent Palestinian state to coexist peacefully. Now, that's a decline of 9% since 2017 and a decline of 15% since 2013. Kamel, can Israel and Palestine, two-state solution, can they coexist peacefully?
Well, I now realize that we have to separate the people from the political solution. What I mean by that is no one should be calling for any transfer of people out of historic Palestine. And once you start from that basis, the political solution should be dealing with how we produce a solution that allows that to happen. Because if you say one-state solution, you want to destroy Israel. No. The idea is you start by actually acknowledging that people are on the land and finding a solution for them. So I think that is the coexistence. One state, two state. Look, anyone who goes and visits the West Bank, obviously Gaza, East Jerusalem with the settlement expandment, will know, I've seen it for myself, that what's called the two-state solution is just now a mirage. It is not possible to happen. How can it happen when there are nearly 700,000 settlers in the West Bank and maybe approaching 1 million soon? And they are some of the most violent, some of them, of course, not all of them, in historic Palestine. So there needs to be a regrowth, if you like, of the peace camp, looking at everyone's rights. And of course, Israel says it's got to be a Jewish state, but clearly that is not going to bring peace, because they say this has to be a Jewish state and the settlers must stay. That is no recipe for moving forward.
Daniel, do you think the whole Gaza war has really backfired on Netanyahu and Israel? Because more than ever, people are talking about Palestine, Palestinian causes, the Palestinian people, and a two-state solution. And ultimately, more and more countries are now recognizing Palestine.
Well, I think that what you've seen, and this is what asymmetric struggle is often all about, is that one leverages the power of the occupying party against itself. In other words, Israeli overreaction, Israeli overreach, the fact that Israel can bomb Gaza to smithereens without, by the way, achieving its military objectives. Those clearly haven't been achieved. The fact that it can, and it now has, is, of course, just creating more vulnerabilities, more loss of reputational, moral, legal, economic, political equities for Israel. So I think not only the failure of intelligence, the failure of political imagination before and on October 7th, but the way Israel has conducted itself ever since is, for Israel, a very significant strategic defeat. However, in the context of that defeat, the ability to keep people within this narrow paradigm of thinking of two states could be the success, if you want, of the Israeli side, the Israeli-American Western approach. Because let's be very clear, when you now have more talk of two states, what most people actually mean practically when we say two states is something that is very, very far from a Palestinian state that will deliver genuine sovereignty. What is on the table, let's be honest, we've had the very clear, detailed designation of Israel committing the crime of an apartheid. That's been made by many states, by Palestinians, of course, by Israeli human rights groups, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty. And what is actually on the table is the corollary to that apartheid reality, namely not a state, but a Bantustan. And so the fact that things are still locked in this prism, and as Kamel said, we have to think in terms of the people on the land. There is a one-state reality at the moment. That's an apartheid reality. We can't close off what the different dispensations would be, but left to their own devices, Israel, the US, the West will try and push, will try and funnel us back into an apartheid Bantustan. It's not really a state reality. And what we have to be thinking in terms of is what best serves the interests of the people on the ground, Jewish Israelis who are there to stay. That's an important thing to acknowledge. And they must thrive in a reality that is not a regime of ethnic dominance and supremacy. And of course, Palestinians who Israel in 47 to 49 and again today is trying to displace, but who are there and who need their equality and their rights.
Faisal, you're in the United States. Just tell us, in all honesty, nothing's going to change for the Palestinian people until the United States changes its policy. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, and that change is seriously underway, really. This is the most dangerous thing for Israel, is seeing a genuine change in the opinions of the Americans. We see an increasing segment of the Jewish community standing up against Israel and its acts. along other people around the world. What really the events the last several months have really shown is they have pulled the mask off Israel as being a bunch of Boy Scouts. Now, the world understands the nature of the Zionist experiment in Israel, and a lot of people in the world are not ready to live with that. This is a farther-reaching result from Israel's attack on Gaza. They have shown the world that they are barbarians, and they are, compared to Hamas. Hamas comes out smelling like a rose compared to Israel now, and that the Zionist project in Palestine is failing, and the world has seen what that project is all about, and a lot of people in the world don't want any part of it. So this is a more serious issue for Israel than whether it's a one state or two states. And I think all this is going to lead eventually to a single state solution that can be a democratic state, and it cannot be a Jewish or a Muslim or whatever state. It would have to be a secular democratic state where everybody between the river and the sea and the Jordan eastern bank can all live together in one entity that respects law and human rights, and it can be free of any ethnic discrimination or religious biases or anything like that. That seems to be the only feasible solution going forward. Everything short of that is just going to exacerbate the current situation and make it continue on further.
Kamel, just come in on that. I mean, it sounds perfect. It sounds like utopia. Let's be frank here. That's not going to happen, is it?
Well, first of all, let's not compare Hamas and Israel in any way. Hamas committed atrocities on the 7th of October, and Israel has been committing atrocities every day since then. The focus for us is thinking about the solution that comes. The United States is instrumental, but there has to be a dismantling of the pro-Israel lobby. Let's be absolutely clear. That is the problem in America. The American people, the students have come out, they'll continue to come out. Once this ends, the pro-Israel lobby will be doing exactly the same thing in trying to pressure those who want to stand for Congress to effectively swear allegiance to a foreign power. Because listening to some of them, to be honest, who've been chased by activists, you'd think that their allegiance isn't to the United States, which is really dangerous. But also that this lobby, which thinks it's helping Israelis, is not helping Israelis.
You think they're damaging their cause?
They're damaging their cause terribly. When you get these Congress people signing the statement threatening the International Criminal Court and saying the sovereignty of Israel is the sovereignty of America, it's a bit like James Cleverly, who was the foreign secretary here on day one, said, Israel's security is the UK's security. Really? I mean, there's England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and Israel. So so the shift that's needed is huge. Let's be clear. The shift that is needed is huge. The students are doing a fantastic job, but they will be oppressed. I'm in Birmingham. At my university, there's an encampment which I've been and seen. At the moment, is going ahead, but the Prime Minister here is trying to quash this, and they're trying to label peaceful protests as anti-Semitic, and that's another problem. We've got to return the term anti-Semitism to what it really means, which is the hatred of Jews because they are Jews. It is not about anti-Zionism. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, particularly because not all Zionists are Jews, and not all Jews are Zionists.
On that point, I just want to bring Daniel back in. Daniel, just tell me, have you ever known Israel to lose so many friends in the world so quickly?
The short answer is no. I would caution against the assumption that there is not a considerable, residual, but considerable presence of forces supportive of Israel for all kinds of reasons, on a good day, those would be acceptable reasons, to to reasons that we have the far right aligns with Israel, their version of white supremacy, their Islamophobia aligns with some of the things one hears from the Israeli leadership. The nature of how the debate has shifted, how the issue of Palestine, how, as Kamel just said, questioning not just a particular policy, but the essence of actual existing Zionism, the extent to which that has punched through is very significant. And I will tell you, within my community, within the Jewish community, people have kind of replaced other aspects of identity with an identity centered around Israel in many cases, not everyone. And some people now, not necessarily from a position of opposition to Zionism in principle, but from a position of, is this working? Is this the guarantee of collective Jewish security and well-being, whether of Israeli Jews or of Jews on the outside? Is actual existing Zionism doing what's written on the tin? You know, the idea that there is only one legitimate way to be Jewish, this idea that Zionism alone should be hegemonic, flies in the face of Jewish history, flies in the face of how Jews grapple with who they are. This has never been the case in our history. And of course, there are those who, for theological reasons, oppose Zionism. There are those for whom universalistic ethics means that you cannot support a state that denies rights to others. But many today are looking at this and simply asking, is it working? And so there is a whole new debate. You know, if you look at what's happened with the Macklemore video, you're Edna, he's a Irish American. So if you look at what's going on in the cultural space, we are in a whole new terrain. What I want to impress upon people is that from there to a different politics is still a journey. It's still a journey we have to go on, and we have to walk on that journey together. Jews committed to justice, Palestinians committed to a better future, that also understand that you undermine what's going on by making sure Jews and Jewish Israelis have a place in that future, as difficult as that is under conditions of today's genocidal assault on Gaza. But we have to march together with our allies, and we have to go where power resides. And it's not going to be quick, and it's not going to be easy, but we can get there. I firmly believe that today.
Faisal, do you think Palestinians and Israelis can get there, as difficult a journey as it may be?
I believe so. I think there's no other alternative. The genie is out of the bottle. There's no putting that genie back in the bottle. And what the genie is producing forces that are moving in the directions that will make it inevitable for creating a peace in Palestine. The world is seeing a different picture, and they're changing a lot of their views. In America here, Jewish Voice for Peace is one of the fastest growing organizations, and the Jewish community is being challenged, and there are a lot of people in it. There are silent majorities even in it. And they are rethinking what this whole thing about, just like my colleague here just mentioned a few minutes ago. So I think if we look to the future and we look at this current generation that are building the encampments at the universities around the world, and not just in the United States, that generation is really heading towards having justice and peace and unity for people in the Middle East. And I think there's not going to be any alternative to having a democratic state that respects everyone in Palestine.
Kamel, final question to you. As a Palestinian, how does it make you feel when you pick up newspapers and you're reading online that Ireland, Spain, Slovenia, Malta, all these countries are now recognising Palestinian statehood? Inside, how does it make you feel?
I think I just wish they had cut ties with Israel when it was declared an apartheid state. What we needed was for things to have happened before the 7th of October. All of this is positive, but for 75 years, Israel was able to do whatever it wanted, right up to the 6th of October, including lots of Palestinian people. So although I welcome the insistent on supporting Palestinians, but at the same time they buy Israeli goods from settlements. That has to stop as well. So I think what is needed now is a recognition of the atrocities that Israel has committed, that there should be sanctions on Israel. And I'm not just sort of dreaming of this happening. That is what is needed to take things back to an ordinary level. I mean, it's interesting. I've heard many numbers of 500,000 or whatever Israelis have gone because they can't cope with what's happening. That also means they're leaving the extremists back there rather than the extremists leaving, because they seem to think it's a biblical connection rather than this is where we live. We want to live in peace with other people.
Kamel, Daniel and Faisal, the clock has beaten us. Thank you all so much. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World, and if you like what you see there, please do hit that subscribe button. But for now, from me and Brady and all of the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.